Welcome to everybody. I think we can start now, no? You wanted to say something, Katrin? No? No. Okay. So I will start now and introduce myself first. So I'm Ann-Katrin Günzel, the editor-in-chief of KUNSTFORUM International. And a very welcome to everybody who's here, and especially to my guests, Isabelle Bertolotti and Alexia Fabre, Hedwig, Fijen, and Antunes for being my guests today. We're talking about going south, traveling to art, biennials at the intersection of tomorrow. So we will talk about the Biennale biennials and their spreading all over the world, the necessity of having such events, the competitions and cooperations, and of course about the traveling to all the different biennial places and the effects it has. Or maybe there's also the question if this is still a concept for the future. And I would like to start with a few words about what is a biennale, what does it mean, since there is no clear definition about it, apart that it takes place every 2 years. And it came up first in 1895 was the first Biennale di Venezia, and it was an Esposizione Internazionale it was called, so a model that has since spread all over the world in a wide variety of formats. In total there are more than 300 different biennials by now, so that is really a lot worldwide. And what are they? They are fields of experimentation and meeting places with different concepts, quite heterogeneous. In the Biennale survey that KUNSTFORUM published, it's this one from 2020 called Quo Vadis Biennale. Our author, Sabine Vogel, she stated that biennials have become a unique model for transnational encounters between artists, a testing ground for new curatorial concepts and for expansive definitions of art. In the beginning, they were, of course, country competitions, such as the country pavilions in Venice still show today. But from the 1990s onwards, it was more a competition by the curators who staged themselves as stars of the scene, followed then at the beginning of the 21st century by the cities setting up a so-called city marketing, which could be easily implemented with a biennial. So those biennials spread throughout cities, occupying a wide variety of venues and searching for traces of the history and social conditions of the places where they take place. Finally, in the early 2000s, satellites were created in other places, and thus they were decentralized. And the former star curators became teams. So there were a lot of changes during the times. Togetherness and horizontality are the keywords, placing commonality at the core, and the exhibitions became shared living spaces, also for research and for knowledge. And since there were always changing concepts of how to biennale, one can say, or maybe there were even rehearsal stages for another world, like Ingo Arendt wrote in this issue of KUNSTFORUM. There's still the question, of course, what challenges and visions are actually dominating today. And that's for sure a question for every biennial that's taking place. And since we have the representatives of 3 different biennials gathered here today for a conversation for the Lyon Biennale, represented by Isabelle Bertolotti and Alexia Fabre, then the nomadic place-changing Manifesta, represented by Hedwig Fijen, and the Biennale de arte contemporanea de Coimbra, represented by Antunes. And I would be delighted that maybe we could briefly introduce the different concepts of the Biennales also to the audience, just to explain a little bit what is the special or the characteristics of the Biennale de Lyon, for example. So you can find that it's the 17th Biennale next year, taking place in 2024. It's about human relations, and hospitality practices are at the center of it. But can you maybe outline a little bit about the concept, or about the special concept that it takes place then next year?
So, hello everybody. First of all, I will introduce more the DNA of the Lyon Biennale, and then Alexia will explain more about the concept of the next edition. So the Biennale in Lyon is a Biennale really involved on the territory, and at the same time for the people living here and for the people coming too. But not only, because obviously it's a Biennale, so you imagine an event every 2 years, but in between, what's happening, which is also important. So in between, we are working with the territory, with people, with artists, and also with the economic network. So the idea is to produce more than half of the work. Sometimes it's 90%, sometimes it's less. It depends on the concept. But very often we are working with people, which for me is important. And the idea is, since a long time, is to collaborate to other, not only Biennale, but we try to, but also with other museums, art structures in France and abroad. So, which means that, for instance, in 2015, we were in Singapore, then we have been also in South Africa, in Russia, in different places, which is not only to travel. Of course, it's the idea of bringing with us young artists to know more about the different scene, but not only the scene. What I call scene is the way people are imagining, are showing sometimes the art, and it's quite different in different places in the world. So it's important for this artist to meet other artists, to meet other way of showing works, to meet other way of sometimes other materials. We had this problem in some places. So it's for me, it's important to connect people to other people and to learn, because each time we move to another place, we learn something and we meet some other people, and together we can work and imagine different things. We know more things. So the idea is, the last one was to collaborate more with the museum in the place, because each Biennale is connected with the history and geography and social context of Lyon. We talked about last time silk, because Lyon is very famous for silk. So we were connected with Lebanon. We discovered very important connection with Lebanon. A lot of people in Lyon didn't know this, so that was important to know this. But we were also connected, of course, with China, but Japan and other places. But to do something different than art, connect you with the art to other people, which for me is important, to have this way of entering in the Biennale, because very often people say in different contexts, I don't know a lot about contemporary arts, I'm not very well, so maybe it's a way to touch, to connect with more people on the territory, which is very important. And then I invited Alexia, because I know how she works, how she worked when she was in a Magval in the museum near Paris. And the work she do with the territory was, for me, wonderful. And I wanted her to be challenged with the new context of Lyon, and with the geography, the history inspired her, and the artists we are inviting. And we are not inviting artists thinking of, we can show that work, that work, that work. We are inviting artists. They see the new places because we are changing the place. This time we will have a very, very nice place. You will see at the moment a very huge place. But so they have to feel the place and to invent, to create new pieces. So that's the new place. So maybe you can say more about the next, how you want to...
Hello everybody. So you have watched the images from the location of the Biennale, which is a very specific and new place for the Biennale in Lyon. It's an industrial place which has been abandoned some years ago, where were repaired manned trains. And as you can see, it's a huge place. And I didn't want to start that way, but this is a real subject, and maybe it is a subject for us. Do we have to deal with the temptation of big productions, or do we have to resist, as I'm going to try to do, because it's a huge place, and I'm sure that we have to deal with it. We will have to talk with it, because the walls talk, the walls sweat, the walls whisper. Still, we have to think about the subject of production and how, but you told about that, we have to think that subject, staying in the territory. But anyway, this is, well, a Biennale to me is, you have talked about the territory. I would like to talk about the time it is, the occasion to invite artists, to show how we trust artists, and to invite artists to work for, but also to work with the audience and the public and the population. So you've been talking about that. But to me, yeah, this is a question of trust, of invitation. This is also the subject of the Biennale, subject of relationships, of welcoming and how we can encounter the others. In the other hand, of course, we think about meeting, welcoming, because we know today how dialogue can be complicated sometimes. I don't know if you will going to talk about that. But this is an intense subject today. So as we are going to welcome the Biennale in an old factory, which used to be a place for politics, syndical fights, this is a national company of trains in France, so maybe you have heard about how many strikes and important fights have become there, have started there. We want to show and to welcome artists in a real invitation, and to let them interpret the subject of relationships and the other side of that. So this is a very open invitation. For production, we will show some pieces that already exist, because we can't do without some pieces that relate so much to the subject. But almost this is an occasion to produce in a very local way, but to produce with also the population, to extend the dynamic of creation before, during, after, to work on a very big territory, because this region is very big. It goes from the mountain nearly to the south, and we try to work with the idea of confluence, of influence, how we get richer, encountering, meeting the others. Maybe you know that Lyon, like many other big cities, is crossed by two big rivers, so two circulations roads, as we can say. And so this is really the idea of being in link with this very special geography. But maybe I'm too long.
No, thank you very much. I would like to talk about the audience and the invitation to the audience and who can be the audience of all these biennials later on. But first I would give the word to Hedwig Fijen to present also to our audience here the Manifesta a little bit and the concept of it, because it's a very, very special concept also.
Thank you, Ann-Katrin. Wonderful to be here. I'm coming from Barcelona. Manifesta 15 is taking place in Barcelona. Maybe the difference between all the biennials in the world and Manifesta is that we're moving every 2 years to a new city. And the last 4 editions were in the south of Europe. So we concentrate on Europe, and from Palermo, Manifesta 12, to Marsilia, Manifesta 13, to Pristina, Kosovo, Manifesta 14. We're now in Barcelona. I think also the main change, to keep it like really short, the main change between Manifesta and the rest is that we are invited with a very special task. So it's not to make an exhibition only or to do something on the visual arts. We changed since Manifesta 12 from l'arte contemporanea, contemporary art, to interdisciplinarity. So we work with architects, environmentalists, biologists, futurologists, and this is also reflecting in the concept. But the most important, since Manifesta sometimes goes to cities where a biennial context or a contemporary culture context doesn't exist, we want to invest the money into long-term sustainable projects. Just to give you an example, in Pristina, where Manifesta 14 was taking place in 2022, we have still part of the Biennale open. We created with Catherine Nichols, who is here from Germany, from Hamburger Bahnhof, we created a center for narrative practice and a center for telling stories otherwise. Why did we do this? Kosovo is a post-conflict war country, and the young generation had a need to tell the stories in a different way. So the Center for Narrative Practice is about radio station, podcast studio, libraries, but also trauma workshops. This is just an example. I see some in the audience who have been in Pristina, so they know a little bit more about this. Barcelona invited us, Ada Colau, the former mayor of Barcelona, invited us to do something completely different. She said, and this is part of the research Manifesta did, the center of Barcelona has very beautiful museums, but the entire metropolitan area where the Catalan people live do not participate in these museums. And the icon of Barcelona, the Sagrada Familia, is catering for tourists. Can Manifesta help us create an alternative cultural ecosystem? And I said, do you want us to make 12 biennales? She said, yes, in principle, yes. So we did not start with hiring a curator or anything. We invited architects, futurologists, but especially the citizens. Because who are deciding about the future? And you see the 12 cities, these are the citizens. And there is a couple of organizations in Catalonia called Decidim, who work with citizens, and they sat with 100 citizens in these 12 cities to find out what are the main topics. This was a year ago, and we invited also 10 international collectives and researchers to go from these topics into, let's say, statements. And we're working now on drafting a Magna Carta. What is a Magna Carta? It's a basic new social contract for Barcelona, but it could also be for Düsseldorf or for Amsterdam or for London. Because everybody in this Bürgerinitiative decided to say to Manifesta, maybe we don't need art, maybe we need something else. And what you see here is like the 3 main conflicts or the main issues which brought on the table is how do we see a future together? What sort of new social contract do we need? The second was, there's so many conflicts between growth and degrowth. On whose side are we anyhow? And then you see here cure and care. For whom do we care? And who cares about the world? Who cares about, that's Collserola, who cares about, let's say, the green lung of Barcelona? And these are the 10 collectives and researchers. And also one researcher, it's Anaïs Florin and Arquitectos de Capçalera. They're very local. They said, this manifesto needs to be about a radical locality. It's not about bringing international tourists. We're dying of tourists. We have 20 million tourists a year. So don't use it like this. So we created a list of collectives who are translating what Manifesta possibly can do. I show you Embassy of the North Sea. They investigated the toxicity and the pollution of the waters, the rivers, the sea. Lara Schnitker, she's from LA, she's comparing feminist suffragettes, 19th century methodologies with, for example, the Extinction Rebellion. And she's creating a work with the dissidents from the textile industry and the feminist societies in the different parts of the metropolitan region. But also Radio Slumber. They organize slumber parties with citizens about how can the young generation survive after COVID and long COVID. Diversorium is a local group of dysfunctional or less functional people, disabled people, who organize parties for local citizens to understand how accessibility needs to be developed. One of the key issues is, okay, if Manifesta is going to take place and we do it for a radical local communities, how do we want to do what? And we found 4 symbolic venues symbolizing these issues I just mentioned. Cure and Care is a monastery from the 12th century in Collserola about spirituality, how to get to a different sort of senses. The Gustavo Gili building, as you see, is a modernist building built in the fascist period, which will have a colonial and decolonial archive, but also an archive about the Civil War, the fascist period. Because if you go to Barcelona, you need to understand, where am I? What has taken place? What were the genealogies, the stories from the history? How did this Civil War or this fascist period, how did this still working on and impacting the different communities? The Casa Gomes is an amazing modernist private building of 4 sisters, but it will disappear because the airport will need to extend. And also a turtle beach where breeding turtles are protected will disappear if we select for the growth of tourism and the growth of the airport. So all these venues symbolize one topic. The main venue will be these 3 chimneys, a Tate Modern before the Tate Modern was existing, and it is the symbol of fossil fuel. And we have invited local communities. What do we need to do with such a kind of space? Does it need to become an environmental center? Does it need to be turned into a park, a vertical park? Does it need to become in housing? So this is what we are going to discuss. We can't say a lot about what it's going to be, because everything is going to be in process, and it's depending also how local communities want us to continue with this. So, for example, on the grounds around the 3 chimneys, we will invite political activists who somehow need to have a voice about what is building, which will definitely disappear if the sea level rises in the next decade for 2 meters. But what does the future of Barcelona needs to be? Ada Colau, who is not a mayor anymore, said maybe this Three Chimneys as an environmental space can become the new Sagrada Familia of the 21st century. This is the monastery. So this is what I can say about where we are. And I am not allowed to say, don't come to Barcelona next year. I'm not allowed to say it by the people, but in principle, the next Manifesta is for the Catalan people to rethink, imaginer their future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have here already also the invitation to a special audience, to a public that you define as the citizens. But before talking about that, let's hear Carlos Antunes about the Biennale de Coimbra.
I'm really happy to be here, especially because I really respect and appreciate these two Lyon and Manifesta Biennale. In order not to get lost in time, I wrote a small text. I will start immediately and then we can talk. With sound, please. You have sound in this video. It's really important.
Ave Maria, os teus olhos não são teus, são duas Ave Maria.
This teaser you have just seen is the final scene of Wim Wenders' Pina, in which Pina Bausch dances a traditional Coimbra song, Fado. This image shows me the purpose of holding a biennial in a city like Coimbra. In this conservative university city, contemporary practice needs to be inscribed, a deeply contradictory city that has always been the cradle of the artistic avant-garde, but at the same time maintains a conservative way of looking at the world. The Biennale has this purpose. It was created by Círculo de Artes Plásticas de Coimbra, an artistic association I belong to since I was 18 years old, the oldest institution linked to the production of contemporary art in Portugal. It was founded in 1958 and has consistently promoted the most radical and modern forms of artistic production, which has lost some relevance from the point of view of cultural production due to the growth of Porto and Lisbon. What we want to do with the Biennale is to refocus the city on the possibility of making it a relevant source of contemporary production, counteracting the country's cultural polarization. The Biennale arises in this context also from the inscription of the University of Coimbra as UNESCO World Heritage Site. Based on these new conditions of the city, we thought it was an extraordinary opportunity to propose a program of highly public visibility in Coimbra, questioning the limit of the inscription itself. A throw of dice, based on Mallarmé's seminal poem of modernity, the first edition of the Biennale in 2015, curated by myself, Luís Quintais and Pedro Pousada, positions the Biennale as the provocative agent that contradicted any glorification discourse of this new condition of the city, which should correspond to new urban responsibility and an action program for the city. In the second edition, in 2017, Healing and Repairing, based on Tony Judd's thought, Heal Fares the Land, curated by Delphine Sardo, the Biennale finds an extraordinary building, the Monastery of Santa Clara. It's a building of huge scale abandoned. The city is divided by a river, monumental on one side where the university is, and on the other, more peripheral, where the monastery is, both facing each other. The third bank, the 2019 edition, curated by Agnaldo Farias, based on the short story The Third Bank of the River by Brazilian writer João Guimarães Rosa, solidifies our relationship with Brazil and Latin America and the former territories of Portugal occupation. We believe that these relationships can be resignified through contemporary art and create the possibility of healing and repairing all the colonial trauma. Midnight, the 2022 edition, curated by Elfie Turpin and Philippe Oliveira, two women. These questions are taken even further, particularly with the introduction of a feminist vision of the world, reflections on the night as a place of exclusion, and alternative epistemologies. The Phantom of Liberty, based on a film by Luis Buñuel, the 2024 edition, curated by Marta Mestre and Ángel Calbulloa, based on the commemorations of 100th anniversary of the Surrealism Manifesto and the 50th anniversary of the April 25 Carnation Revolution that introduced democracy to Portugal, will once again be an opportunity to reflect on these periods and not to exalt it. Latin American and African countries will occupy a very central place in what will be our program. However, I would like to end by saying that the last thing we want is to be held hostage by our geographical condition. That is, there is a specific idea that a peripheral country is expected to take care of the peripheries, and a country in the southern Europe is expected to take care of the global south. We tend to resist this vision because it seems to be a neo-colonial view of the expectations that geography places on us. So the Biennale is about this condition, but it's also about the opposite. I will leave you with these images from the show we have just had, a No Zero solo show from Ragnar Carstensen, which touched Portugal so much. Sound please here. And last, sound please. And last but not least, the 12th century map of the Arabic geographer Al-Idrisi, representing the world upside down, a wrong and Eurocentric way to refer to it. So, from Bina Bausch to Semi Awa Kamara, from Wuppertal to Senegal, going south, going north, going everywhere.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that was a very interesting overview of three totally different concepts, and still there is a lot in common, I think. So it's like the keywords of responsibility, sensibility for places, for people, for topics, and for citizens, going together with the citizens who are part of the audience or the entire audience, or doing it together with the people. And since it's not the first time, the next year you are dealing with these topics and with these concepts, my question would be, is this choosing the audience or inviting this kind of audience going outside of the cities in the outskirts, does this also function for the periphery of society? So does it really work with this going together with citizens and having a different audience than this art audience that you might meet here maybe at the Art Cologne, but it's like a totally different approach. And I think it's a very difficult approach also to do it this way, because going outside does not mean that the people have access, really. It's still always a privilege also of education, of financial resources, of time you have to really do all these concepts or to participate in these concepts. And I think that would be interesting to hear also from the last years or the last biennials. How does it work, or how is this this wish, or maybe also a little bit the utopian project to integrate people and to have a participation, a wide participation outside the art public? Does it really work at the end also? Yeah, for the Manifesta, for example.
I think for Manifesta maybe it's different because we're moving from city to city. So our first let's say, research approaches. For whom are we doing it, and what is, let's say, the main question here? And we learned the 2 L's, learning and listening. If you listen to what's happening in a local community, and I think that's what I learned in Kosovo, but also in Palermo, redistribution of power. Asking some really critical questions to yourself. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? What is the purpose? For whom are you doing it? And I think this can be on the 4 Ps, for the people, the program, the partners, and the projects itself. And we had, it started maybe in Palermo, where Leo Luca Orlando asked us, can you help us transforming this city? And I said, of course we can't. You're working 25 years against fighting the mafia. But then we started working on how is culture accessible for large audiences, and is an audience überhaupt interested in participating? And we spoke a lot about, can a biennial become an incubation of change, and what sort of change? And we found out that interdisciplinarity, intergenerational approach, so not only young people or old people or the wealthy people, but especially interdisciplinarity or transdisciplinarity, forced us to work with architects, with urbanists, to understand sociologists, to understand where are the questions we're dealing with. So we never start with artistic practices, and we never start with artistic questions. That's also why, for example, in Kosovo, 800,000 people visited the Manifesta, especially members of the community who are normally not participating. And it's a primeur, Carlo Ratti, who did a Bürgerinitiative in Kosovo, won the German Design Prize on his transformation of the city of Pristina, because it was a lot about, hey, in a post-communist, post-war society, what does it mean to share public space? So we did a project about this. And this didn't mean art exhibition. In the end, there were some art exhibition, but it was cleaning a garbage dump in the city of Pristina. It was cleaning a rape alley and putting light there so women could pass the city from another. It was taking the cars from and creating a pedestrian art. And it was creating a center where women, especially, could feel free to talk about the war, the Center for Narrative Practice. The main thing for Manifesta, but I don't think all the biennales need to work with this, is how can we also use the money and the investment for long-term, langfristig development. So this is also why in Barcelona, we're not looking at the museums in the center. We're looking into connecting these 12 metropolitan cities. And I approached my colleagues in Sharjah, Liverpool, Venice, Documenta, Berlin, saying, if we're dealing about environmental issues, if we're dealing with, let's say, overconsumption and overexploitation, let's not invite the art audiences to fly to Sao Paulo, Sydney, to fly to, Shanghai, but let's work together and exchange the works we are producing, because also many artists are complaining at this moment. I spoke to Isaac Julian, for example, that some of the works and the artists need to work on 10 biennales. So let's reduce not only the CO2 emissions, but also let's reduce how much we need all this kind of transport, and think about collaboration and co-creation. Think about how we can do something together. Think about that Manifesta doesn't want to be unique and invite artists to do this own work, but do it together. And I think this could be something which could also look at a critical view to the art world itself. That's what we're trying. We don't know what the outcome is. In terms of curation, we are also critical to ourselves. We invited Filipa Oliveira, who was also working in Coimbra, who is very close by, speaks the language. We invited these 10 collectives, but also we said, if it is about a metropolitan area, why do we need a curator from we call them creative mediator, from New York. Maybe we appoint and invite people from those cities to help us. And that brought a fantastic project, which I want to share. The local communities and artistic representatives of the cities found out that in the Second Republic, before the Civil War, there were, like now, a lot of concerns about industrialization, environmental issues. And in 1923, in Barcelona, in Catalonia, before the Civil War, they created a radical pedagogical system in which there was a school at the beach, a school at the woods, to try to find out how can we live together in a much more sustainable way. And when we found the archives, it was one-to-one applicable to now, 100 years ago, because we didn't find any solution for the rivers, we didn't find solutions for how to detoxify the woods. So we're taking a lot of inspiration from the locality and try to think from the past and include this. Sorry for the long intro.
Thank you. So you're really working together with the people who are living in this region. How about Coimbra? Is it similar?
Yes, of course. We have biennales have a huge problem. They became a kind of typology, and when we think about this typology, we imagine in a way that are all equals. This is a happy day today because we are seeing that. In fact, we have alternatives. The 3 biennales here, in fact, work in a different direction, and this is very important. By saying this, well, in fact, working with why do we do biennales? To show contemporary art. I prefer to think we do these biennales to promote and to empower the cities where we are working with. And that's what we do, in fact, in Coimbra. We invest a lot of our time working with the communities. And even the curators, we immediately start to tell them we don't want a kind of star system curators traveling around the world. If they want to work with us, they want to work with the people, with the local. And by doing this, by knowing the city, by knowing what the city needs, they can start to propose a program for the city. You talked about the social contract. I like the idea. I used to talk about a program for the cities. It's in a way, it's the same. In fact, this idea of typologies, in fact, came from the idea of the universal exhibitions. Huge shows, a kind of summer festival, spring festival, that can allow people to move to the city, to spend money there and then leave. We have to do the opposite. This is what we have to do. Do the opposite, work with the local, and by doing this, I believe we will gain a lot. I used to use an image. As you know, we Portuguese people like to eat and food. And I like to think the biennales as a kind of gastronomy. If it's relevant for the locals, if it's good, for sure it will be important for the locals, and it will gain attention from the outside world. But it's in fact, it starts by the opposite direction.
Okay. Yes.
I do agree, absolutely. Empowering our territories, but also empowering the artists. This is a chance to invite them, to recognize their value in the society. Well, now I'm actually directing Les Beaux-Arts de Paris, which is a school of fine arts in France, in Paris, of course. And I feel that the artists want to be recognized, they want to create, and also they want to act. They want to act. This is something which is very different, which is new. They want to be active in the society. And I think that a biennale, like all your biennales, which are thought to deal with, to do with, not only to do for. And this is the best chance we have to recognize the special value of artists in our world. And maybe Biennale should last longer.
Yeah.
Maybe this is another subject, but this is a special time to highlight their value and to make them active and to give them the chance to act with the people and not only for the people.
So not only together with the people, you mean that, so you are inviting the audience from outside to come and to really to explore
yes, and
the region
of course. But also now the artists don't want to create alone. I think the artwork is not the only issue, is not always a final issue. The work is doing with, thinking with, in a special location, in a special venue, and with a special community, with people. Most of the young artists, even if they still work in studios, they ask for, they long to work in a special situation. They want to be invited. They want us to believe in them.
And I think what you are saying is super important, because I think we are, many people in society, educated and non-educated, care about the world and care about the environment. Let's say the whole climate change, the climate crisis, one of the issues most people care about, is a very technical one. And what I found out last year, dealing with this subject with artists, biologists, specifically artists can create unorthodox, imaginary solutions. For example, we have one group, Parliament of Trees. They want to give trees the legal right of an entity as a non-human actor. So involving this group, we want to allow a forest to start a lawsuit against the city about being toxified. People understand that. People are enthusiastic about those things. So the imaginary power of what artists can do in trying to give a direction to some of the key issues in our society is crucial. I agree.
One more thing I
Yes.
would like to add is, what's the difference between a biennale and an exhibition? For me, it's quite different. An exhibition is a theme and a collection of works, and you can work with artists, of course, but it's a specific purpose, which can be in a city or another one or everywhere in the world. But a biennale for me is an event. Also, the duration is important. It's not only one shot from March to September. It's something you deal with the population, but also the audience, and also the people who will come, also the artists you inviting, and it's a long discussion with the artists, and the artists are discovering things on the territory. They are influenced by social context, by the other artists, because they are working together. There are not only few artists, it's a huge number of artists, and it's a discussion, how many artists to invite, small, a lot of, it's discussion we have, not only concerning the budget, but also the way you are inviting them, do they have to travel, and also we can say that we will co-produce something with other Biennale, but will the work you will produce travel in the same way it has been imagined somewhere and in another place? I think all these questions, it's more complex than just saying, don't travel, be careful of this. And I think it's a really complex questions when we are talking a lot about this. And I think you are doing the same in your place. I think it's all these things have to be discussed, but together with the artist, and also on the way we want to promote the way we are thinking about this new.
But you have kind of collaborations, because since I mean, it's absolutely understandable what you say, and it's I agree also. But like you said, there are collaborations for not having like artworks produced or people traveling all around the world. Since we have more than 300 biennials, it's a lot, so you could almost every day go in another place and look at something different, and even if there is a characteristic for the place and a site-specific work, it still remains the problem of the traveling around and of this art public traveling around to all the different places. And of course the question, is this necessary? Do we really need so many biennials, or would half of it be enough?
People need the Biennale on their territory. Not a lot of people are traveling. I think we have the idea that all the world is traveling to Barcelona, then to Lyon. It's not true.
You don't think so?
They're not traveling everywhere in the world. Yes. We are traveling, all of you, and we are traveling, but
a little bit
all of
with an electric car. But I think it's a good to say the typology of a Biennale is being confused. A Biennale is not only, and I think not all the 300 Biennales are just extreme exhibition production centers. Many of the biennials, especially in non-Western countries, have a very important co-creation, conscious, and even activist local urgency. And I think we can work together with all the Biennales to promote that function of a Biennale. Think about a Biennale not only as a kind of exhibition, think about it as a kind of, as I said, incubation for social creation. Maybe in Coimbra there is a lot of need to rethink what the fascist period had done today. Or, for example, in the Netherlands, it needs to be thought the colonial slave trade. This is part of it. So it can be an instrument for change, and artists and culture are very much needed. That we need to be critical to ourselves. Yes, I do think so. I think we need to be critical because we are part of a system, and this system needs to change, that's for sure. How we do it, in which time frame, as you say, the complexity of this question is also extremely difficult, but we can make into a positive, constructive attempt imaginary solutions, and I am trusting cultural interventions and artistic practices in this. But I think it is nothing worse about being critical to yourself.
Yes.
So maybe that's a good Schlusswort. Katrin gave me a sign to... Our time
that's
is
a pity.
already,
I thought we just started.
Yes. Unfortunately, we're already at the end. Maybe there's time for one or two questions from the audience, if there are questions you have. Otherwise, I would thank you for coming and for giving us this impression of the biennial. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks also to you for coming. Thank you.